Fintech Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. Welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with Fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in today's show, I'm joined by Ben Pfisterer from Zeller. Ben is the CEO and co-founder at Zeller, the Melbourne-based Fintech, reimagining business banking for Australian businesses. Ben has extensive financial services experience across both local and global organisations and was previous country manager for Square. Zeller is one solution for all your business finances. From EFTPOS and invoicing to accounts and cards, it's everything you expect from a business bank, but better. Every Zeller product is designed to give complete visibility over payments, spending, expenses, and cash flow. I chat to Ben about his journey as a founder, what he learned working with one of the world's biggest fintechs, and I also have a grumble about how bad business banking is for small business owners like me. But before we chat to Ben, if you're new to the show, make sure to follow us if you're listening on podcast, or subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're coming back, thanks for your support. Hey Ben, welcome to the show.
Hey Dexter, huge thank you for having me on.
Mate, 3 years ago today, I was sat in a coffee shop in Melbourne with you, and Zeller didn't even have a name, was very much in stealth mode. And I think I invited you on the podcast back then. And you quite rightly said, let's wait until we do something first. And then I'll go on. So it's an absolute joy to have you on the show. And look, I think, in fairness, could have easily had you on 2 years ago because it's been really incredible what you've done. But rather than me telling people, would you like to tell our listeners a bit about Zeller and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. That reflection on catching up is amazing because, rarely you kind of stop and look back at these timestamps on life and realize how fast time is traveling. But yeah, crazy how much has changed for all of us. And by the way, congratulations on your 7 years, I believe.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, thank you.
Very good things. For us, Zeller, mainly came around from the fact that, a few of us in the founding team had sort of deep experience in payments and financial services. And we were looking around the world, seeing that was obviously at the onset of a real accelerated part of the boom in fintech. And there was a lot of businesses, moving into the financial services space, but for businesses, but I don't think anyone's solving the real root problem. There was a lot of these, this sounds a bit off in calling them niches, but there was a lot of products and businesses being built for particular needs, whether that's lending, sort of credit cards, expense management, invoicing, and they're all great needs, but they're not always what every business needs. So we took a step back and actually, what does every business need from a financial service provider? And that was to be their MFI, their main financial institution. So we just dissected what we thought that primary relationship is today. And it came up with sort of three products. And that was obviously the ability to accept card payments. Electronic payments, as we know, is rapidly displacing cash. So having a pretty deep experience in that space that I knew firsthand that we could do it a lot better, and it still wasn't anywhere near where it could be from an innovation or a cost perspective or a reliability. That the list goes on. So could we build a next generation EFTPOS terminal solution? But that money in component was only one part of it. Businesses then needed to go to their bank or someone else to open an account where to put their money. So often they had to bifurcate that experience. So we thought, well, if we've got the payment in the terminal experience, can we then add on an account so they can collect their funds and get access to it quicker? So the thesis was yes. And then the third party, that money in, money held, is obviously the money out. Like, can we help these businesses who commonly have hassles and complexities with cash flow issues actually get their money, put their money to use, whether it's, paying expenses, paying rent, paying staff and the like. So that's when we put obviously the transferring ability of the account and then the business MasterCard on the back of it. And then we put that all together. And that was the initial product set, and making sure that you only need to sign once and you get all that. So effectively you could run your business on Zeller. And that was the initial premise of it. But longer term, it was very much to say there was so many pain points in the business banking experience. Like with today, businesses are forced to, go to a traditional bank and then cobble together this mismatch of different fintechs and what have you. Like, can we just actually put that under one roof, either build it ourselves or partner with the best in class and bring an integrated solution to market?
Awesome. And who typically is this just purely to small businesses? We've seen, kind of similar approaches, but it's very much been focused on, sole business owners, us poor PTY Limited small business operators seem to have been forgotten about. Who are your customers?
No, it's absolutely any business type. We're sector agnostic and size agnostic as well. I guess the only area where we probably tap out a bit is when you get into those really, really large enterprise who want, large access to debt facilities and what have you, which is obviously something we don't offer at the moment. But apart from that, we don't want to ostracize anyone in the ecosystem. So a lot goes into our onboarding, that we can onboard any types of business structures as well. So definitely open across the market.
Fantastic. Now, I was looking forward to this chat for another reason. I've just come off the back of a very frustrating 10 days with my business bank, who's also my personal banker, who also has my mortgage, and has basically all of my financial information at hand from the last 5 years. And I'm in the position where I needed to buy a new car and thought I'll do it through the business. Mate, 8 days later, still didn't get a result. I think I spent a day and a half filling in forms, giving them information they already had. Is this just me, or is this happening to pretty much every business in Australia?
I wish for this Australian business community I could say it was just you, Dexter, and no offense to you. But no, it's definitely not just you. It's across the board. And the irony of us sort of setting up Zeller at the start, we had exactly the same problem, because obviously we hadn't built all the infrastructure or the accounts. So we had to go and get a bank account ourselves. It took, I think ours took at least 6 weeks. I don't think we even completed the actual proper onboarding of going into branches.
And you would have been lucky, because COVID hit, so you couldn't go in and sign the forms.
Yeah, it was a little bit before that, but it would have been even worse with that. And I think at one point we were recommended to fax documentation in, which we just always fell off our proverbial chairs. So no, it's just definitely not you. And we recently did a survey where 91% of Aussie businesses feel that their business bank isn't meeting their needs, and that sort of supports the experience you went through as well. And also 90% of businesses would actually consider going to a new digital-only business banking experience, obviously, like we're trying to build at Zeller. So it's definitely not you. It's across the market. It's really been forgotten when you look at all the innovation happening across fintech. Just that the real push to get into the core, being the MFI of business banking, just hasn't been done. There's a simple reason, is because it's exceptionally difficult. But no, it's definitely not you.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to kind of take my hat off to my bank, right? From a retail perspective, as a retail customer, I'm pretty happy with the proposition that I get, right? And the service that I get, certainly the digital proposition. Just seems on the business side that, every single aspect of this process that I went through, which was, going online, applying, I got to the end of it and said, there's been a system error, try again. So I did. Yeah. I did it 3-4 times, right? And I checked my credit report, and I've got 4 applications for credit because this thing falling down. And then I got ended up going on and asking for a call back, and I got a call back 3 days later, and I was like, yeah, this is urgent. Passed on to 4 or 5 different people. So yeah, mate, I certainly am not going to knock the effort that I think banks are putting in to try and solve this problem. But it just kind of illustrates to me that they're not equipped to solve it. Would you agree with that?
I would. I mean, if I was taking a positive light, on the Australian banks as well, obviously they provide a very stable infrastructure and service, across the market. So there's a big tick there. But just the rate of change in the way businesses and consumers' needs are evolving so rapidly, literally for them to keep up, let alone having to look back at the infrastructure and how it adapts to new form of technology and new builds or doesn't, is an incredibly hard task. So I guess, again, shining a positive light on it, they have to pick their bets. And often they move quickest on areas where potential disruption is happening the fastest. So obviously the consumer banking, neobanking side around around the world is, very much in spotlight and has been for a number of years. So I guess they're trying to innovate on that space as much as they can, but we're still seeing that they're nowhere near some of the more advanced consumer products either. But on the business bank, I just don't think they've been challenged at all. And I think globally business banks have been pretty comfortable sitting on generic propositions that in no way are evolving to meet the modern needs of businesses. So they don't have that impetus or push to actually make the change required.
Yeah. It's been really interesting, just to see how things have evolved since COVID as well. Australia, I think, is a really great example for business banking as a micro ecosystem, because we've got, 2.5 million small to medium-sized businesses. I think around about half of those are, sole trader businesses. If you think, the amount of tradies that we've got, the startup ecosystem, retailers, kind of all of these different business models that fit into this small business category. What was the, from your kind of thinking of starting the business, because everybody, recommends you go for a niche. What was your thinking around, how do we kind of niche or hone in, on this kind of business space? Because it is still pretty wide and large.
Yeah, it is. It's a good question. I don't think we probably followed the playbook. If you look at business case studies of actually, focusing on one thing and getting that right over time and evolving, it probably comes from the fact that the personalities involved with the business. And by way of example, my background, I absolutely love working on projects or for companies or anything that is really difficult. I just get bored super quick on stuff that's boring or just sort of in the motions or doing a job someone else has done. So when we looked at this, we thought to actually crack through into the segment where business owners know us alongside the big banks or big US-based fintechs, you have to make a bit of noise and you have to do something that's really different and you have to do it really well. So part of it was just we're a sucker for challenge and we just love the fact that we could do as much as we can and do try to take on stuff that's difficult. But also that again, back to that initial premise is to be that MFI, you actually have to offer a breadth of products. And unfortunately, if you can't do that from day one, you'll take a lot longer to get to that sort of common psyche consideration set. So and we thought those three products just sat together perfectly for every business. So we took it on, but we are an absolute product-led, innovation-led business. Yeah. I'm not going to be the CEO of a business that isn't innovating. So we've got a long list of products and services we're building and deploying as we speak. So that certainly will never stop from us.
And anything kind of exciting that you're working on right now that you can share? Or you're about to launch?
Absolutely. Last year we effectively started a new tranche of work, which was effectively building 7 brand new fintechs within Zeller. So, having already 3 combined as one, we had another 7 to launch. So we've spent the last few months building that, a lot of it from scratch, and really excited to say we've kicked the year off with a few launches. So just in the last few weeks, we launched Zeller Invoices, and so that's within the whole Zeller ecosystem. So you don't have to go out and plug something else in or take another service provider. It's already there. There's no incremental monthly fees or anything. The processing rates are exceptionally low based on what we already do as well. So we're able to offer that incremental service, but we've taken a new lens on it. How can we make it easier for invoices or merchants to not have to chase invoices and check whether they've been paid? There's an integrated bank account so they can automatically see whether it's been paid. So Zeller Invoices is one big part of it. The second one was Zeller app. I don't want to use a super app because it's such a cliched, overused title, but our premise has been we want an app where businesses can get everything in the one spot, so they can see all their money coming in from different sources or money going out. They can see their customer profiles, their invoices, anything like that in the one spot. So you can download a Zeller app now and have a look at that. And the third part was probably the biggest one, but probably harder to explain any sort of to the non-fintech people is what we kind of call a standalone business transaction account. So if you look at our offering to date, it's been more predicated on accepting card payments and then an account to support that. But we've recently launched sort of standalone business transaction accounts. And no matter who you are, if you're an eBay seller, online seller, if you're a consultant, if you're a tier 1 recruiter, for example, that has a podcast, no matter who you are, you can sign up and you don't have to use our payments products. You can use our transaction accounts. You can use our invoices. Effectively, you can use whatever you want. And over time, if your business grows and needs change, you can start using any solutions. or you can keep using part of the products that you want to use from other providers. We're also okay with that. We don't believe in forcing you to use our product. So those three things were the big launches over the last couple of weeks. And yeah, we're very much focused on getting the word out there and making sure businesses know that these products are in market.
I have to say, right, I kind of get a little kind of smile whenever I go into a coffee shop and I go to pay and it's a Zeller terminal. It's kind of, because I know the origins of where it's come from, right? It's like such a, it's such a kind of gratifying thing to see, just more and more. I remember when I first seen the terminal when I went into Officeworks, and I was like, geez, I got to get in touch with Ben. No, I want to kind of just dig a little deeper on the strategy that you had, because it is really bold to go and take on three different things at once. It completely flies in the face of advice. It was even advice I was given when I started my business was focus on one thing. Now I've got to say, I didn't take that advice and it screwed up, my business. I got off to a flyer and then got 18 months in and was like, what am I doing? I was kind of, how have you managed to keep so disciplined to be able to execute on those three things, and at the same time, execute on those three things where the world was in turmoil and we're going through a global pandemic, and you're bringing people into the business you've never met before who are all working remotely? I mean, that must have just been insane, right? Like I can't think of another way. Like, it sounds impossible to do talking about it now.
Yeah, no, well put. It was absolutely insane. There's no doubt about it. And we look back and it was technically, again, if you would just take everyone's advice every time you did something, it was the worst time to launch our product. I mean, we were effectively spearheaded by a face-to-face payment solution with, accounts and cards attached to that. Now, as you know, in Australia and around the world, but Australia, we had the most severe business and economic lockdowns you could find. Like businesses literally were told to stop operating for many, many months. So launching into that was just ridiculously, ill-timed to a degree, but it actually opened up some perverse sort of growth trajectory for us and I'm only sort of pontificating about this. I haven't done any, research on it, but I think it was the first time businesses actually had a chance to actually take a step back and some pause for a minute to go, actually, am I best equipped with this innovation changing? Have I got the best banking solution on board? Have I got the best account? How much am I paying for my EFTPOS payments, all that sort of thing. So I think they actually paused to sharpen their business up to make sure they ran better, but also have a renewed focus on cost. That was part of it. But in terms of launching the business, again, as you would know, and every entrepreneur knows, like when you come up with something you want to do, you can't dictate the timing. If it's there and you want to do it, you'll do it whenever you're ready. And that was absolutely the case for us. And we started 2020, really started to put the wheels in motion on that. And we didn't know that COVID was coming. Maybe we would have thought twice if we'd seen it on the horizon somehow. But I think for us, it was an absolute blessing in disguise. Not that I would want that period ever again. But for us, actually, because we were all literally locked in our homes. And so, you literally couldn't go out. You couldn't socialize as per everyone. But so we had nothing else to do but build this business. So I think that first year to be able to build those three products, integrate them, get them ready to launch to the degree of stability and innovation that we did within 14 months was probably due to the fact that we were absolutely myopically focused and restricted geographically to not do anything but build this business. So a big part of it is that. I think the other big sort of thing that we got right is being realistic about what's involved. Like you only have to pause for 1 second to go, let's take on some of the biggest banks literally in the world in our market, plus some of the most well-capitalized, advanced global fintechs as well. Like if you try to do that lightly, you will fail. Even if you've got a great product, a great team, you do a small thing, it will fail unless you absolutely have that perfect streak through. So we thought if we're going to do this, it's big. We have to bring on amazing investors. We have to bring on material capital, not just for the fun of the process, but actually we need to be supported really well to build these big products and get them to market and grow them like we want to. So that was a big part of it. But also that realization, not being my first business that I've launched, is that when I was first thinking about it, I knew that trying to do it myself would be incredibly arrogant and stupid. And I just don't know enough about everything we're going to do it. And I'm not the type to want to, hoard portions of my company or maximize my shares. Like I want to get the best team around me. I want them to have skin in the game. And I want to make sure if we have any chance of making this work, we need the best in class people around us from the very outset. So the biggest thing we got right was just the initial 4 co-founders, amazingly talented people, but real clear delineation of roles of what we're doing was a big part of it. And the fact that
if you don't mind me asking, what were the kind of 4 different skill sets or profiles that you felt kind of came together to make, to give you that chance of success?
Yeah, so there's myself being the CEO. I have obviously a background in payments and financial services. So I know a lot about growing a brand, the growth part of it, supporting a brand, bringing teams together, making sure we're ticking all the boxes for what you have to do in a quasi and fully regulated environment for different parts of these products. And obviously I know how to build teams as well and brands from the perspective of what I did with Square. But I hadn't built infrastructure. So the second part of that equation is we need some really big firepower in the technology side of things. So rather than just take on one, I guess we don't really use these titles, but a CTO, we got 2. So we got David and Alfred, who in their own rights are phenomenally talented standalone CTOs. But then their roles were clearly delineated quite simply at the time. There's overlap now, but like front end, back end. And let's just focus on that and you do those exceptional things well. And then there's Dom, who worked with me at Square. And we know we work well together. We know we complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. So just having that ability for us to split a lot of the roles. So having those 4 split. But the other big thing I did think we did well, which I don't think many co-founders do well, or have an honest conversation about what it means to be a co-founder. One thing I was really clear on getting agreement on was like, okay, we're all co-founders, but co-founder is just a historical footnote. Yeah. Like just to say you're co-founders, like the team you bring on straight away, they're all co-founders, they're all founding team. But being a co-founder is not a role. It's just a fact. Yeah. So make sure we play our roles, and what are our roles? Let's define them and let's play to the strengths and support each other to succeed in our own roles. And just that clear delineation from the start would set us up definitely for that initial success.
Now, the initial funding that you got as well, completely under the radar, nobody knew about it. It was significant, right? Like, how did you go about getting that level of seed money behind you? And I'm not going to say the number, but it's, I think, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the history of the Australian startup scene. How did you get that, that kind of backing?
So I guess there's a little bit of naivety in this before we got to how we got it. Was originally the idea was, I've done a lot of stuff in tech and financial services, but I've never raised many millions in capital. So the initial thought was, let's just self-fund and get it going and get some sort of initial product towards market ready. And that was just ridiculously naive. Like, even though we could put a bit of capital in, it wasn't the right move. And my brother lives next door to Mike Starkey from Home Loans. And my brother and his wife would say, this guy called Mike did this Athena thing, which I'd heard of, obviously. Should have a chat to him before we start. Okay, cool, that's good. And I'm assuming you've met Mike.
Yeah.
But Mike's a phenomenally nice guy and very helpful and very transparent. So the initial conversation, he was pretty clear in just saying, you're pretty stupid not to chat to a couple of VCs. And I was like, I don't want to go down that path just yet. But then he suggested, Paul Bassett, who I'd met before, but, Paul at Square Peg, and Alex at Apex. And I just had a chat to both of those guys. And literally the first chat with Paul was, I kind of joke about this, but, I wasn't there to pitch, which is a stupid thing if you're sitting in a VC's office, but I was just telling him what we were trying to set out to do and my approach to it and the team we're putting together. And it was a very positive meeting. And, a few days later we had a term sheet. So it just went really quickly. And obviously getting Apex in, Alex was just the same. He's a business builder himself. He understood it. He understood exactly what you're talking about, the pain point. So the process was very organic. It was very fast. And but we were upfront. We don't want to raise, a couple $100,000 and see how we go. We want to, build bring in a material amount of capital and do this properly. And, we had their support, which was great.
Yeah. Now, when you and I very first met, kind of Australia was going neobank crazy. And, I think we've seen that the model probably wasn't, taking what we'd seen in the UK wasn't the right approach for us. What has become really evident, you look at the success of Judo, who just focused on lending and got a massively successful business. But that gap, that need is very much in the business banking side of it rather than the consumer side, of which, Australia's banks, I think, are some of the best in the world when it comes to digital for consumers. What's been, I guess, from your kind of view of, where you're at, the next kind of step where it needs to go. We've seen Judo come in and kind of do a really good job around a very specific segment. You've talked about a lot of niches. What do you think is kind of the thing that's missing right now?
Yeah, so I mean, back to your initial point of different neobanks, I think one of the most common mistakes, and this is not any revelation on my behalf, it was just pretty obvious to me, but obviously to a lot of people as well, is that any fintech around the world which is absolutely reliant on chasing an interchange play, it just does not work. Yeah. It doesn't work. It might, in the US with higher interchange, it might work temporarily, but if you're relying on that longer term as cash is displaced and central banks put more focus on the cost of acceptance, it's just never going to last. So the one thing we were clear on, there was no way that we were going to just be an interchange play, and we wanted to make sure we wanted to do two things. We wanted to scale really quickly, but we wanted to be revenue positive from day one. We wanted to generate revenue. So that's why being able to process payments, we built our own payment gateway, a lot of our own infrastructure, that we wanted to make sure we were making money from the first day we operated, and then we could iterate and launch new products. And that was a little bit different, our different take on it.
I was going to say, that was a radical approach in 2020, wasn't it? Fintech startup to make money.
Work out your monetization strategy from day one. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of businesses do that well and not know their monetization strategy. I think Cash App was, for example, one thing I saw at Square. They had obviously ideas of monetization, but they had no idea what they ended up doing. So, but I knew the pressure that gets put on you if you don't have that clear strategy into monetization. So I definitely didn't want that. It didn't make sense to do that. So no, it was a little bit counter to the market, but it's obviously served us well in terms of what's next. And you're citing Judo, for example, and definitely kudos to them. That their strategy was I guess unique to the way they wanted to approach it, and it's different to many others. And they just stuck to their guns and did what they do well. I think for me, it's still, and I think they still, and I don't mean to criticize them or the others, but we still, as business, we call it what you will, financial services for business banking or whatever, we still haven't hit that equal footing with the big banks, because it takes time to really get your brand to that common psyche understanding from businesses. And Judo hasn't got there yet, growing really well, doing the right things, but I think they'll probably admit they're not there yet, and they can't wait to get there. And then the business will be an absolutely more so of a rocket ship. And same thing for us. Like, we're only a year and a half, just under 2 years into being live, and we've got a long way to go, and in a positive way. So we're looking forward to that, and I can't wait. And that's the thing that bugs me about fintech in general, and definitely in Australia. In spite of there being so much innovation, amazing work by entrepreneurs, countless times launching businesses, there's almost no businesses, or there's a couple kind of chipping away that yet to get to that level pegging, that equal standing as these big four banks. And that obviously takes time because they've been around for, God knows how long. So we don't expect them to get there. There's still a long way to go, which is why that whole question of, regulation and supporting startups, and that what has to still continue. It has to still getting these fintechs to make sure that they are on a level standing. Yeah, I think once we see brands getting to that, like you see in the US, that's when I think the Australian fintech scene will be really, really exciting.
Yeah. Now, we've talked about, I guess, two core components of success. One is getting the right founding team. Well, three actually. Second is getting the right, kind of investors on board. Third bit, big problem to solve. Very clear idea about revenue strategy and go-to-market strategy. That fourth component is really, probably one of the toughest to get right, which is bringing in the right talent. How have you gone about doing that?
You're absolutely right. It's probably the number one thing, to be honest, out of all of them, but they are obviously entwined. Having clear strategy attracts talent, having capital attracts talent, inviting talent attracts the inverse of that as well. So it is a sort of like a very entwined componentry. But for talent, I think there's a few different things. Obviously, there's the dark art of what is culture and how do you build culture. And having had the ability to try to do that before under different brands, I learned a bit about how to do it and not do it. I'd probably, to be honest, But I guess probably the one rule that's sort of prevailed over all else is the theory that talent attracts talent. And having sort of four of us co-founders, and particularly the three others being such exceptional practitioners, I think when people interviewed with them, they kind of get that this isn't a flimsy idea or someone just moving into fintech because it's perceived as cool or want to do something like that. Like they actually get that we understand our space, but we actually put some runs on the board in terms of trying on different brands and getting it right and just honing our skills a bit. And so I think when people come on board, they get that double edge of, hey, this is obviously something that could work. So my chances of this business succeeding is vastly higher. But even, I don't know if they actually said this, literally, but it's like, even if it doesn't work, I'm going to learn a lot from these people. And I think that those people, the initial team that came on board, they just added to that. And we were pretty meticulous in our hiring. The broader founding team, and I don't know what the definitive number of that is, 20 people or something. There was no weak links in that. Everyone that came in, we were really, really tight on making sure we had the best team. And then once you have that nucleus of an amazing team, it just goes from there. Good people hire good people, talent attracts talent, and it went from there. Obviously, that over time dissipates, and we're just making sure we can last as long as possible.
How many people are in the business now, Ben?
I think around 225.
225. Wow. So, I mean, it is again, right? A business that's kind of flown under the radar to a great extent. You see every now and then a bit of PR piece, if there's been a raise. I've seen a PR piece about you when you did the survey on business banking, but I mean, that's a significant business, right? Which has probably gone through already three separate stages of growth. What have you noticed about yourself and how you've had to learn, develop, and evolve as the business has grown? Because I from the research I've done and everything that I've observed, kind of get these clear kind of 1 to 50 is a different business to kind of 50 to 150, 150 to 300 is a different business again. How, what have you noticed about yourself as you've kind of gone through that growth with the business?
Yeah, you're right. And the hard thing about those phases, when you look back on them, they seem like clear step changes. But when you're in the midst of them, you don't even notice them happening until either it's too late or it's past and you're looking at the next one coming. I think probably the main thing, there's a few things. One, the ability to communicate directly to team members becomes more difficult and more dissipated. So obviously when you've got 5, 20 people, literally you're on a call together and you can convey a message, whether it's a positive or a negative or a motivational piece, and like just clearly defining your objective. So it's really easy to communicate when you've got 225 people that, mostly in Australia, but sometimes around the world. That's obviously harder again. You got to learn how to communicate and you got to express your communication more succinctly, more directly, but also empower those people that are leading to also share that communication ability. That's one of it. And the other one, which is really obvious and commonly cited, is your ability to, at the start, very much get your hands dirty and have your hands on the wheel and be, jack of all trades, doing all the stuff, but know when to sort of start pulling back. I'm not of the belief that you should pull back early. And obviously, when you look at a bigger, more established business, people say, the CEO or the COO or whoever shouldn't be involved with the minutiae of work. And that's fine for an established business. But literally the early days, the success pivots every day. Yeah. Like if you get some decision wrong or product wrong, you could just spiral off in the wrong direction and get wrong. So, the theory that you should, have your hands off the wheel or not get your hands dirty early on is ridiculous. Yeah. So, we very much did that. Even to this day, I still think we're at a stage where we don't hire just managers to manage. We hire people who the way I coin it is I like hiring people who you have to drag off the tools. Like say, do less yourself, get your team. I like that mindset of people that like doing both, growing, fostering talent, but also willingness to get their hands dirty and get through that. So going through the phase of know when the right time is to start stepping back, that's probably the hardest one to pick. But if you can pick that and time that, you empower your staff well and you actually can focus on other things.
One of the challenges, I guess, and kind of, limitations, and I don't say limitation in a negative sense. I think it's just the, stage of maturity of where Australian fintech is at. But if you look, there's very few founders who've got experience in a business that is scaled to thousands of employees and has gone global. So I think there's quite a lot who've kind of got to that 200, 300 stage, but that next step is kind of, I think, the toughest one to get. You've obviously worked for one of the world's biggest fintechs in Square. What have you taken from that experience that kind of either one, you feel equips you then, for that next leap, or gives you the kind of maturity to go, you know what, I'm not that guy. Maybe it's time that we bring in somebody and I kind of start to hand over control to other people.
Yep, and that is a critical one, and you see that time and time again. Business is starting to fail, or at best to stagnate when you get to that phase. And I don't want to speak ill of Square because I love that time. It's still part of my DNA. I'm very proud of what the team managed to build in the Australian operations. But yeah, we saw it like at the real level, like the early innovation when I joined, and you had leaders like Sarah Fryer and Francois Bruguer and these people, like they were aggressively growth mindset people, like not aggressive in a bad way, but really strong. They were in the weeds with you. They knew exactly what you're trying to do. There was no stopping. There was pushing. For me, that was like I was a pig in proverbial mud. I loved it. I loved doing that stuff. But then in the latter years of Square, it became very political and managers managing people and a bit of empire building. And unfortunately, and I'm assuming they don't agree with me at all, but their level of innovation dropped off dramatically. And the only way real innovation happened in the business was it had to somewhat be isolated. And you look at Cash App, and what Brian Grassadonia did with Cash App was phenomenal. That's a pure innovation play, amazing success story. But that had to be hived off and given some independence to really work to stay out of all that stuff. So I think big part, and it's not only about Square. I think every company, to your point, goes through that. But they certainly went through that stage where it was such a rocket ship and it was doing so well that suddenly it's a little bit more about people just holding on, enjoying the ride, as opposed to really getting in the weeds or making big disruptive decisions to launch new products. And that just eased off. So, you're absolutely right. It's very hard to avoid it happening. And I think the only way you can avoid it is to just, as a CEO and a leadership team, is just be hyper aware of it happening. Yeah. What are the signals? Is the politics creeping in? Are people in it for the right reasons? Are we now hiring just people who want to come in for different reasons? And that's a really hard thing to keep an eye on, but you have to.
Yeah. There's been a big shift in the last 12 months, particularly in Silicon Valley, where we've seen layoffs and the kind of questions being asked, I think in a number of occasions, do you actually need as many people as what you've got in the business? What's your view on that? And kind of given where you're at with 225 people, do you see Zeller being a business that employs 10,000 people, or do you think it's always going to be a business that kind of runs lean and has those action-oriented people? And do you think it's possible to actually deliver on the vision by kind of continuing to operate that way?
Yeah. When I say the number 225 out loud, I realize only when I say it that it's actually a lot of people. Yeah. When you're inside the four proverbial walls, you never have enough people. That's what everyone always says, right? So it doesn't feel like we're in any way bloated or we've hired, ahead of our time. I think we've got absolutely the right number at this point. And so we're doing quite well in that. We've been very prudent when we hire. Yeah. We do keep an eye on, obviously, the ratio of revenue versus costs, and we make sure we don't get over our skis on that. So we are very careful on that to make sure we get that right. I think for us, we are building big products and moving into this massive business banking space, and you can't do that with a handful of people. Yeah. So it's a big part of it, and make sure we get that number right. In terms of what's happening more broadly, I'm definitely not the person to say, oh yeah, I saw this coming so easy. But I was always the one thing that perplexed me is that, being a CEO and a co-founder of Zeller at the time, I would look around and every other business was doing well. Yeah. If you believe their press and their own press, like there was no failures, there was no collapses, there was no down rounds, there's nothing. It was like everyone was succeeding. And it's kind of like when you're in an investment cycle where every investment you're doing is succeeding. It's like, that's not the real world. Something is happening against those tides behind the scenes. And it's obviously become unraveling a little bit now for those businesses that didn't get ahead of their skis and actually hire before they grew or have the right product set in place to actually, support those growth metrics they'd committed to investors or staff or internally. So I think it's a super healthy time now. It's not good to see people being laid off, and on a personal level, that's gut-wrenching. But businesses do need to be more prudent with the way they grow. And I think that also helps keep control of the culture as well, in terms of making sure, having a successful business is not a right, it is earned. And it's really, really, really hard. Most businesses fail. If you want to be successful, there is no other equation than working hard. And I hear a lot of theories on this, and I get it. Everyone can do that, follow their own path. But the one common denominator for me is if you don't have people working hard and really committed to the cause and getting behind the mission you're trying to achieve, it's just not going to work. So, yeah, it doesn't really surprise me that's happening at the moment. Hopefully it doesn't go too far, and hopefully we come out of it, rebound really strong, but time will tell.
It's interesting you say that, Ben, because I just had this conversation the other day and we're talking about 4-day work weeks. And it kind of really strikes me, right, that the people, most of the people that are advocating for it, I'm pretty certain in 12 months' time will be wanting a 3-day work week. And it's kind of the answer isn't to do less work or work less. It's to find work that you really enjoy. And when you find that, you actually want to do more of it, not less of it. I know people really struggle with that, right? But my kids will say to me, like, Dad, when are you going to finish work? And I'm like, my work will never be finished, right? It's like I just take a rest and it's delayed until I've had a rest, and then it's kind of back on with it. So I think what you've talked about, the types of people that you hire, the kind of behaviors, that's a sign of a really healthy organization. Not only health in terms of business health, but I think in terms of the people and their mental health and their kind of physical health as well. Because you're not reaching burnout, right? You're not kind of being pushed to the edge. You're in this mission, and kind of, there are going to be times where you're going to pull a midnighter. You're going to kind of do 7 days straight to get something done, right? But then you reset. And I think we've got lost in this whole thing around 4-day work weeks and everything else. And it's like, look, put your energy into something that you want to create. And then, it's kind of, that actually gives you energy. It doesn't take away from it, right?
Yep. No, I couldn't agree with it. Just everything you said there. I think there's a few things that I kind of struggle with, and it's this one thing that every business has to be suitable for every person. And I just don't think that's never been the case. Yeah. And as diverse as human beings are, companies will be as diverse as that. And the challenge for every person and business is to find where you fit.
Yeah.
If your priority is like you don't care about work and it's just a way to earn money, to live a whatever lifestyle, that's fine. That's not a bad thing. It's your life. You do what you want, but you've got to find that company that is somehow achieving that. And if you find it, stick to it, but don't expect a company to change for your needs. Yeah. And I think if you're honest about that, that's the one thing we do in every interview process. We have this really honest conversation where it's a little bit abrupt to some people, but we talk about two things we believe in. One is this unequivocal hard work. We've got this amazing platform, this amazing opportunity, this amazing investors and people and 225 people's and their lives and careers in our hands collectively. The only way we're going to take this forward is by working hard and working really hard. On the flip side of that, I've worked at countless companies which I did not fit, and I hated work, and I cringed every Sunday night going to bed. I didn't want to go to work the next day, and my constant evolution to find a company I like. So I know that life outside of work is way more important than what happens in work. And I tell everyone, so we've got these two diametrically, seemingly opposed forces is we have to work really, really hard, but life is more important than work. So they're the challenges. How do we find the middle bit? How do we find it work? And one of your points is absolutely spot on. If you see work as just a chore and it's awful and you don't like it, hey, wrong company, search for something that is. The second you actually like what you're doing, you like the people you're around, you like what you're achieving as a company, you like servicing, like in our case, the businesses, it's not a chore and it's not hard work. And if you can enjoy that, and there's nothing better than being surrounded by people that have that element of commonality. We're all diverse, but they all think that common way. The thing that inspires me absolutely every single day at Zeller is the talent in our office. And that sometimes when I have my ebbs and flows of working, when I come across someone who's done something amazing, it's like that spurs me on, that spurs the next person. And hopefully sometimes I spur some people on. So no, you're spot on. I think that Yeah, those points are absolutely right. Trying to just make sure you're transparent about what your company stands for, and then you attract the people that fit. And they don't always work out, but when they do, they're phenomenal.
Ben, it's been fantastic chatting with you again. And I guess, we've tried to ram in 3 years almost into 45 minutes. Before we wrap up, look, what area of fintech has got you most excited right now, and why?
That's a tough one. I think if you're any entrepreneur or sort of person working in technology, your job becomes pretty insular. So I'm not a big, looking around at the outside and working out what's going on. I very much focus on what Zeller has to do. So everything that we're trying to do obviously excites me. I think, if we pick at an area which we've already talked about, the thing that excites me is like actually seeing a few fintechs and, banking type products and solutions actually hit the mainstream. That's what excites me, to getting those brands above the parapet to actually be able to compete evenly and fairly and actually make their mark on the Australian financial services landscape. A lot of fintechs have got close and then they disappear for different reasons. And I want to see a lot more, not just Zeller, but I want to see a lot more breakthrough. So seeing that happen hopefully the next few years will be incredibly exciting.
Fantastic. And what can we kind of come to expect from Zeller and the rest of 2023?
New products. So again, anyone, and I assume this is an absolute podcast appealing to an amazing set of entrepreneurs. So no matter what business you've got, you can actually start, putting away those outdated bank accounts and actually try something new that has a whole lot more functionality and helps you run your business better and ultimately gives you back more time to do what you do, which is run your business. So anyone that's running a business out there, check out myzeller.com. And I think you'll find our products are, pretty exciting for your needs, and we're evolving super quick. So check it out. If there's any feedback, there's things we're missing, we love that. We love hearing it from people who want something more. But our promise that we'll constantly innovate, and products we don't have yet, we will have in the future. And hopefully we can help Aussie businesses grow.
And we also get incredible talent listening to this podcast. If anybody's out there and they want to find out more about the types of opportunities and working at Zeller, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, the careers page is on our website, myzeller.com. Please come and check it out. We are still hiring, so there's some really exciting roles. We're really exciting phase as well as we start to grow off the platform of early success. So hopefully not too many people in the tech and tech spaces have been burnt to what's happened recently, and there's still a few out there that are super keen to actually dig their heels in and try it. So check it out, see if there's a role there. But we're constantly putting new roles up. So if it's not today, have a look tomorrow. And we'd love to have a chat to any talent out there.
Well, Ben, it's been great to have you. Look, I kind of keep going back to this, date 3 years ago today. But to be sitting here now and just spent this last 45 minutes with you, mate, I got to say, it's just amazing what you've done.
You are very, very kind. Thank you. It's a big bunch of people put a lot of effort in. We are very proud of them, but we're also very guilty of not, stopping every now and again and actually saying the very early success is going well. But we're just looking forward to the next phase as well. But no, very, very kind words. Thank you, Dexter.
Thanks, Ben. And you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you're new to the show, make sure to give us a follow and a subscribe, because it really helps me book fantastic guests like Ben onto the show and help other fintech fans like you find the show as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a subscribe and like. If you're coming back, thanks so much for your support. And until the next episode, keep well. Fintech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you find world-class fintech leadership talent to build world-class fintech ventures. And you can find out more at tier1people.com.